The summer evening was winding down at Murphy's gas station on the outskirts of town, with the sun casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Officer Sarah Chen guided her dark blue Honda Civic into the station, the events of her 12-hour shift still weighing heavily on her mind. Even in her civilian clothes, a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, the badge clipped to her belt served as a reminder of her duty, on or off the clock. The station was quiet, with only a few customers inside the convenience store buying snacks and drinks. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sarah pulled up to pump number 4, the same one she always used during her stops. Her routine was simple: fill up her tank, grab a coffee, and head home to her apartment where her cat, Max, would be waiting. As she stepped out of her car, Sarah noticed the distinct rumble of motorcycles in the distance. Working in law enforcement for 8 years had taught her to always be aware of her surroundings, and something about that approaching sound made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She kept her movements casual as she inserted her credit card into the pump, but her trained eyes constantly scanned the area. The rumbling grew louder, and 3 motorcycles appeared around the corner. They were Harley-Davidsons, customized with chrome extensions and matte black paint jobs. The riders wore leather vests decorated with patches that Sarah immediately recognized. The Road Warriors, a motorcycle club that had been causing trouble in neighboring counties. Their reputation for intimidation and violence had earned them a thick file at the precinct. The bikers circled the gas station once, their engines growling menacingly before they pulled into the lot. The leader, a tall man with a scraggly gray beard and arms covered in faded tattoos, parked his bike directly behind Sarah's car, blocking her exit. His 2 companions positioned themselves on either side, creating a triangle formation that any law enforcement officer would recognize as a tactical surrounding maneuver. Sarah maintained her composure, continuing to pump gas while watching their reflections in her car's window. She'd dealt with their type before, both as a patrol officer and during her 4 years in the Marine Corps. What they saw was a woman alone at a gas station. What they didn't know was that she was the lead tactical instructor at the police academy, with multiple commendations for her hand-to-hand combat skills. Inside the store, the young attendant, Jimmy Parker, noticed the situation developing. He worked at Murphy's for 3 years and had never seen these bikers before. His hand hovered over the silent alarm button as he watched through the storefront windows. The leader of the group, who had a patch reading "Snake" on his vest, dismounted his bike with an exaggerated swagger. His boots scraped against the pavement as he approached Sarah, who had just finished replacing the gas pump. She turned to face him, her stance relaxed but prepared, her weight evenly distributed on both feet. A subtle detail that would have warned anyone with combat training that she was ready for anything. "Nice night for a fill-up, isn't it, sweetheart?" Snake's voice was rough with false sweetness, his smile revealing tobacco-stained teeth. His 2 companions snickered, one of them spinning his bike keys around his finger while the other cracked his knuckles dramatically. Sarah's response was professional but firm. "Can I help you gentlemen with something?" Her right hand casually rested near her hip, close to where her badge was clearly visible. The movement wasn't lost on Snake, whose eyes narrowed as he noticed the shield glinting under the station's lights. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Snake's fake smile disappeared, replaced by something darker. He took another step forward, deliberately knocking over the coffee cup Sarah had placed on her car's roof. The hot liquid splashed across her vehicle's hood, steam rising in the cooling evening air. "Oops," Snake sneered, his companions moving closer. "Looks like you made a mess, officer. Shouldn't be out here all alone, should you?" The security cameras mounted on the station's roof silently recorded everything, their red lights blinking steadily in the growing darkness. Inside the store, Jimmy had already dialed 911, speaking in hushed tones to the dispatcher while keeping his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding at pump number 4. Sarah Chen took a slow, deep breath. 8 years on the force, 4 years in the Marines, and countless hours of tactical training had prepared her for moments exactly like this. What these bikers didn't realize was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives by choosing to harass the wrong off-duty cop at a gas station on what had been an otherwise ordinary summer evening. The tension at Murphy's gas station thickened as Snake and his 2 companions moved closer to Officer Chen. The second biker, a shorter man with a shaved head and a patch-reading razor, circled to her left while pulling out a switchblade from his back pocket. The third biker, who went by Diesel, was a heavy-set man with a thick neck and brass knuckles glinting on his right hand. Sarah maintained her position, her mind already calculating angles and distances. Her police training had taught her that most confrontations could be diffused with the right words, but her combat experience told her these men weren't interested in talking. The spilled coffee continued to steam on her car's hood, filling the air with its bitter aroma. "You know," Sarah spoke calmly, her voice carrying across the quiet station, "there are 4 security cameras recording everything right now. 2 on the roof, 1 by the door, and 1 above Pump 6. She gestured slightly with her chin, never taking her eyes off Snake. "Plus, I can see the store clerk on his phone. I'm guessing he's not ordering pizza." Snake's laugh was harsh and mocking. "Look at that, boys. The little lady thinks we care about cameras." He took another step forward, his boots crunching on the loose gravel. "Maybe we should show her what happens to cops who stick their noses where they don't belong." Inside the store, Jimmy had finished his call to 911 and was now watching in horror as 2 more motorcycles pulled into the station. However, these riders took one look at the scene, recognized Officer Chen from previous encounters at traffic stops, and quickly rode away. They wanted no part of what was about to unfold. Razor flicked open his switchblade, the click echoing in the evening air. "Boss, maybe we should give her a new haircut, something real short." His laugh was high and nervous, betraying his uncertainty despite his threatening words. Sarah's training kicked in automatically. She noted how Razor's grip on the knife was too tight, how Diesel's stance was unbalanced, and how Snake kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. These weren't trained fighters. They were bullies used to intimidating weaker targets. "Last chance," Sarah announced, her voice now carrying the full authority of her position. "Back away, get on your bikes, and leave. Otherwise, this ends with all 3 of you in handcuffs." She deliberately moved her hand away from her badge, making it clear she was ready for whatever came next. Snake's face contorted with rage. "Get her," he barked, lunging forward with a wild haymaker punch that would have been telegraphed to a rookie boxer, let alone a trained combat instructor. Sarah's movement was fluid and precise. She stepped inside Snake's wild swing, using his momentum against him. Her elbow connected with his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. As he doubled over, she grabbed his arm and used a simple joint lock to guide him face first into the side of her car. Razor charged in next, his knife slashing in an amateur arc. Sarah kicked the back of Snake's knee, causing him to crumple to the ground, then pivoted away from the knife. Her hand caught Razor's wrist, and with a twist that she'd demonstrated hundreds of times at the academy, the switchblade clattered to the ground. Diesel, seeing his companion so easily handled, reached behind his back. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she caught the glint of metal. A gun. Before he could bring it around, she had already closed the distance. Her knee drove into his thigh, hitting the nerve cluster that every Marine learned about in basic training. Diesel's leg buckled and the gun, which turned out to be an unregistered .45, fell from his grasp. The entire sequence took less than 10 seconds. Snake was on the ground, groaning and clutching his stomach. Razor was on his knees, his wrist bent at an angle that made Jimmy wince from behind the store window. Diesel was struggling to stand, his leg refusing to cooperate. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Sarah kept her hold secure, her breathing steady and controlled. 8 years of breaking up bar fights, 4 years of Marine combat training, and countless hours in the dojo had made this almost routine. Almost. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said to Snake, who was still trying to catch his breath. "I really just wanted to get some gas and coffee. But you boys had to make it complicated." The first police cruiser turned into the station, its lights painting the scene in alternating red and blue. "Now, who wants to explain to my colleagues why you brought a gun to a gas station?" Red and blue lights flooded Murphy's gas station as 3 patrol cars pulled in, tires crunching on loose gravel. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez was the first out, his hand instinctively on his holster until he recognized Sarah. A small smile crossed his face as he took in the scene. 3 burly bikers subdued by 1 off-duty officer. "Officer Chen," Rodriguez called out, approaching with 2 other officers. "Looks like you started the party without us." He signaled his officers to begin cuffing the suspects, while Sarah maintained her hold on Snake, who had finally stopped struggling. Jimmy, the store clerk, emerged from behind his counter, clutching a USB drive. I got all the security footage right here, officers. His voice cracked with excitement. You should have seen it. She moved like something from an action movie. As the officers secured the suspects, Sarah noticed Snake trying to discreetly kick something under her car. She reached down and retrieved a small bag that had fallen from his vest pocket. Inside were several zip ties, duct tape, and a crude hand-drawn map marking various gas stations in the county. Well, Sarah said, handing the bag to Rodriguez. Looks like these gentlemen had quite an evening planned. She watched as Rodriguez's expression darkened, recognizing the implications of the materials. The local news van pulled into the station, attracted by the police chatter on their scanners. Sarah groaned inwardly. She'd never been comfortable with publicity. A young reporter with perfectly coiffed hair jumped out, already gesturing for her cameraman to start rolling. Meanwhile, officers were running the bikers' IDs through their system. Officer Jenkins, a rookie Sarah had trained at the academy, let out a low whistle as he read his tablet. Sarge, you're gonna want to see this. These guys matched the description of suspects in a string of gas station robberies across 3 states. Snake, now properly handcuffed and sitting on the curb, spat on the ground. You don't know what you're dealing with, lady cop. The road warriors have chapters everywhere. This ain't over. Sarah knelt down to his eye level, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Here's what you don't understand. I'm not some random cop you happen to run into. I train every officer in this district. That means every single person who might respond to whatever your friends are planning has learned from me. So yes, it is over. The young reporter had made her way over, microphone extended. Officer Chen, can you tell us what happened here tonight? Behind her, the cameraman was capturing footage of the 3 bikers being loaded into separate patrol cars. Before Sarah could respond, Jimmy interrupted, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. It was amazing. These 3 guys tried to jump her, but she took them down like it was nothing. One of them even had a gun. Rodriguez quickly stepped in, moving the reporter back toward her van. We'll be issuing an official statement through the department's press office. He turned to Sarah. Chen, we'll need your statement, but it can wait until morning. Go home, get some rest. As the scene began to clear, Sarah finally noticed her coffee still splattered across her car's hood. Jimmy approached her with a fresh cup. It's on the house, he said, beaming. Actually, you never have to pay for coffee here again. Boss's orders. Sarah accepted the coffee with a tired smile. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what could have happened was setting in. She watched as the last patrol car pulled away, Snake glaring at her through the rear window. Rodriguez returned to her side, flipping through photos on his phone. You're not going to believe this. Those Road Warriors patches? They're fake. These guys have been impersonating real club members to avoid detection. The actual Road Warriors have been looking for them too. Apparently, they don't appreciate having their reputation tarnished by amateur hour here. Sarah sipped her coffee, letting out a long breath. So they were just one-ups trying to make a name for themselves? Looks that way, Rodriguez nodded. But they were wanted for some serious crimes. You probably prevented a lot more people from getting hurt tonight. As Sarah finally got back into her car, she noticed Jimmy had already cleaned the coffee off her hood. The station was quiet again, the only reminder of the incident being the scuff marks on the pavement where Snake had face-planted. She started her engine, ready to head home to her cat and a hot shower. But first, she had one more stop to make, the all-night diner where her partner was working overtime. This was definitely a story he needed to hear in person. All-night diner cast a warm glow onto the nearly empty parking lot as Sarah pulled in. Through the window, she could see her partner, Detective James Martinez, hunched over case files at his usual booth. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, carrying her gas station coffee. You're not going to believe the night I just had, Sarah said, sliding into the booth across from James. He looked up from his paperwork, his experienced eyes immediately noting her slightly disheveled appearance and the small tear on her shirt sleeve. Let me guess, James said, pushing aside his files. You finally tried that new yoga class? His attempt at humor was met with Sarah's tired smile as she recounted the events at Murphy's gas station. As she spoke, James' expression grew increasingly serious. He pulled out his laptop and began typing rapidly. Chen, those guys you took down. They're connected to something bigger. Look at this. He turned the screen toward her, showing a series of police reports from neighboring states. Multiple gas station robberies, all following the same pattern, he explained. 3 men, fake motorcycle club patches, targeting solo female customers. But here's where it gets interesting. They never stole more than a few $100s from each location. Sarah leaned forward, her coffee forgotten. That doesn't make sense. Why go through all that trouble for such small amounts? Because the robberies were just a cover, James revealed, pulling up another file. We think they've been using the gas stations to track shipment schedules. Every location they hit was along major trucking routes. The real money was in hijacking cargo trucks. The diner's overnight waitress, Ruby, approached their booth. You two want the usual? She'd been serving them late-night meals for years during their case discussions. Just coffee for me, Ruby, Sarah replied, still focused on the laptop screen. James, look at this pattern. All the attacks happened between 8 p.m. and midnight, when the stations would be relatively empty, but not completely deserted. James nodded, pulling out his phone to make a call. I'm contacting the FBI task force. With your statement and that security footage, we might finally have enough to connect all the dots. As James stepped outside to make his call, Sarah noticed a group of authentic Road Warriors members pull into the diner's parking lot. She recognized their leader, Big Mike Thompson, a legitimate businessman who ran the local chapter and had helped the police on several community initiatives. Big Mike spotted Sarah through the window and gave her a respectful nod as he entered. He made his way to her booth, his leather vest creaking as he sat down. Officer Chen, he said in his deep, gravelly voice. Word travels fast in our circles. Those punks who tried to jump you. They've been causing trouble for legitimate clubs all across the state, making us all look bad. Sarah studied him carefully. You knew about them? Been tracking them ourselves, Big Mike admitted. They've been using our colors, our reputation, to commit crimes. That's not how we operate, not anymore. We're businessmen now, community members. James returned from his phone call, acknowledging Big Mike with a familiar nod. FBI's interested. They're sending a team first thing in the morning. Looks like your gas station throwdown might have cracked open a multi-state operation, Chen. Ruby returned with fresh coffee for everyone, including Big Mike. On the house, she said. Sounds like you all have a long night ahead. As they discussed the case, more details emerged. The fake Road Warriors had been using small-time robberies to gather intelligence on shipping schedules, security patterns, and police response times. Their ultimate target appeared to be a series of high-value electronics shipments scheduled to move through the area next week. If we hadn't stopped them tonight, Sarah began. They would have had everything they needed, James finished. The gas station was probably their last reconnaissance point. Big Mike stood up, adjusting his vest. I'll put the word out to our other chapters. If any of their associates try to continue their operation, we'll know about it. As the night wore on, Sarah finally felt the full weight of exhaustion setting in. What had started as a simple stop for gas had turned into the potential breakthrough of a major case. James gathered his files, offering to drive her home. You know, he said as they walked to his car, for someone who just wanted to get some gas and coffee, you sure know how to make an evening interesting. Sarah laughed, looking back at the diner where Big Mike and his crew were still talking with local officers who had stopped by after hearing about the incident. Sometimes, she reflected, the biggest cases broke open on the most ordinary nights. The next morning, Sarah walked into the precinct to find it buzzing with activity. FBI agents in dark suits moved purposefully through the bullpen, setting up a temporary command center. Her gas station incident had clearly escalated into something much bigger than anyone had initially expected. Special Agent Diana Torres approached Sarah, tablet in hand. Officer Chen, I'm leading the task force on this case. Your encounter last night might have helped us crack a criminal network we've been tracking for months. She gestured toward the conference room where crime scene photos and maps covered the walls. Inside the conference room, James was already working with tech specialists analyzing the gas station's security footage. On multiple screens, they watched the incident from different angles, studying every detail of the confrontation. Look at this, one tech specialist pointed out. The way they positioned their bikes, the coordinated movement. These guys had military training. They're not just common criminals. Sarah leaned closer to the screen, noticing details she'd missed in the heat of the moment. The hand signals they used before approaching me. Those are modified combat signals. No wonder their movements felt familiar. Agent Torres nodded grimly. We've identified your friend Snake, real name, Marcus Whitaker. Former Special Forces, dishonorably discharged 5 years ago. His teammates, Razor and Diesel, also have military backgrounds. They've been using their training to run sophisticated heists disguised as simple robberies. The conference room door opened as Captain Richards entered, followed by Big Mike Thompson and 2 other legitimate Road Warriors members. The captain had asked them to consult on the case, given their knowledge of local biker networks. They've been operating in our territory for months, Big Mike explained, pointing to various locations on the map. Always using different fake chapters patches, making it hard to track them, but they slipped up when they targeted Officer Chen. Sarah's phone buzzed, a message from Jimmy at the gas station. He found additional footage from an older security camera that covered the back of the station. The tech team quickly pulled it up on the main screen. The new angle revealed something crucial. While Snake and his companions had confronted Sarah, a 4th person had been hidden behind the station, photographing the delivery schedules posted on the loading dock. That's their real purpose, James exclaimed. The confrontation was a distraction. They needed those delivery schedules for their bigger operation. Agent Torres quickly made some calls. We need to cross-reference every gas station they've hit with nearby shipping facilities. They're mapping out the entire distribution network. As the team worked, Sarah noticed something in the footage that others had missed. Look at Snake's vest pocket. There's a corner of a document sticking out. It has the same letterhead as the shipping manifests from the loading dock. The FBI techs enhanced the image, revealing partial numbers that matched an upcoming shipment schedule. They're not just after random cargo, Agent Torres realized. They're tracking specific shipments. High-value electronics, probably headed for that new tech facility being built outside town. Captain Richards turned to Sarah. Chen, I want you and Martinez to work directly with the FBI on this. You've seen these guys up close, and they might try to accelerate their plans now that we've caught some of their crew. Big Mike and his Road Warriors offered additional insight into local routes and potential hideouts the fake bikers might use. We'll help however we can, he assured them. Nobody messes with our reputation and gets away with it. As the meeting continued, Sarah received another message, this time from Rodriguez. Snake was ready to talk, but he'd only speak with her. Something about respect for a worthy opponent. It's your call, Agent Torres said to Sarah. But if you go in there, we need to play this carefully. He might be trying to feed us false information to protect the rest of their operation. Sarah looked at the evidence wall, then at her partner James, who gave her a supportive nod. I'll talk to him, she decided. But first, let's review everything we know about his background. If he's ex-military, he's trained to resist interrogation. We need to be smarter. As the team prepared for the interview, Sarah couldn't help but think about how differently this could have gone if she'd stopped at any other gas station that night. Sometimes, she reflected, being in the wrong place at the right time made all the difference in breaking a case wide open. The interrogation room was cold and stark as Sarah sat across from Snake, who looked considerably less intimidating in his orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed to the table, but he maintained an air of arrogant confidence. Behind the two-way mirror, Agent Torres, James, and the rest of the team watched intently. I have to admit, Snake said, leaning forward slightly, you surprised me last night. Not many people could have handled that situation the way you did. His tone was respectful, but Sarah could detect the underlying calculation in his words. Let's skip the mutual admiration, Sarah replied calmly. We know about the tech shipments. We know about your military background. The only question is whether you want to help yourself or go down with the entire operation. Snake's expression flickered briefly. You don't have the full picture, Officer Chen. Those shipments, they're just the tip of the iceberg. But I might be willing to share some information for the right deal. Behind the mirror, Agent Torres spoke into Sarah's earpiece. Let him talk. We need to verify if what he knows matches our intelligence. Snake leaned back, studying Sarah's face. You were military too, weren't you? I can tell by the way you moved last night. Marines? When Sarah didn't respond, he continued. Then you understand loyalty. My team, the real team, not just those two you met. We served together. Fought together. And now you're stealing together, Sarah countered, betraying everything that service stands for. This struck a nerve. Snake's composed facade cracked slightly. You don't know what we went through. After we came back, the system abandoned us. We're just taking what we deserve. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the interrogation room. Officer Jenkins burst in, breathing heavily. We got a situation. Someone just tried to break Razor and Diesel out during transport. There was an ambush. Sarah stood up quickly, noticing the slight smirk on Snake's face. This was a distraction, she realized. You kept us busy while your people made their move. Smart girl, Snake chuckled. But you're still 2 steps behind. Racing to the command center, Sarah and the team found chaos. Reports were coming in of multiple incidents across the city: a fire at a shipping depot, a false bomb threat at the airport, and armed men attacking a cargo convoy. They're creating confusion, Agent Torres declared. Multiple diversions to hide their real target. James pulled up the traffic camera feeds, showing various emergency vehicles responding to different locations. How do we know which incident is real and which is a distraction? Sarah studied the map, remembering something from the gas station evidence. The shipping manifest in Snake's pocket. It wasn't just any schedule. Check the route for today's main tech shipment. The team quickly overlaid the incident locations on the shipping route map. A pattern emerged. Each emergency was strategically placed to draw law enforcement away from one specific area. The old industrial park, Big Mike pointed out, having arrived to help. Perfect spot for an ambush. Lots of abandoned warehouses, multiple escape routes. Captain Richards immediately began coordinating with SWAT and available units. They'll be expecting a response from the main roads. We need to approach from multiple angles. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another message from Jimmy at the gas station. He'd remembered something crucial. Before the confrontation, he'd overheard Snake making a phone call about meeting at the old factory where we trained. Wait, Sarah called out. Snake's military background. Check if any of the abandoned factories in that area were ever used for military training exercises. A quick search revealed an old manufacturing facility that had been used for urban combat training years ago. The same facility was now directly in the path of the tech shipment's alternate route. That's the real target, Sarah declared. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. Agent Torres quickly mobilized her team. Chen, you and Martinez take point with our tactical unit. You know how these guys think, how they move. We need that advantage. As they geared up for the operation, Sarah caught a glimpse of Snake being led back to his cell. He called out to her. Remember what I said about loyalty, Officer Chen. My team won't go down easily. Sarah checked her vest and weapon, turning to James. They might have loyalty to each other. We got something better. The element of surprise and the right side of the law. As the tactical teams moved out, Sarah couldn't help but think that this had become much more than a simple gas station confrontation. It had turned into a chess match between 2 groups of trained professionals, and the next few hours would determine who had the better strategy. The old industrial complex loomed ahead as Sarah, James, and the tactical team approached under the cover of early evening darkness. The abandoned factory's broken windows reflected the last rays of sunlight, creating eerie shadows across the crumbling concrete. Alpha team in position. Sarah's trained eyes scanned the building, recognizing the tactical advantages Snake's team would have identified. They'll have lookouts on the north and east corners, she whispered to James. Those were the standard observation posts during training exercises. Right on cue, a glint of metal caught her eye, a sniper scope reflecting the fading light. She keyed her radio. Sniper, East Tower. SWAT 2, do you have eyes on? Target acquired, came the response. Standing by. The tech shipment was still 20 minutes out, deliberately delayed as part of their plan. James pointed out fresh tire tracks leading to the loading bay. They're already inside, probably setting up their ambush points. Sarah noticed something odd about the tracks. Look at the pattern, they're deeper on one side. Those vehicles are heavily loaded. They're not just here to hijack the shipment, James realized. This is their fallback position. All their resources, their stolen goods, everything must be inside. Agent Torres's voice came through their earpieces. Intel just confirmed movement inside. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 targets. More than we anticipated. Sarah thought back to her confrontation with Snake, remembering details of his movement patterns. They had the same training, the same tactics. We need to do something they won't expect. Just then, Big Mike's voice surprised everyone on the radio. Officer Chen, my guys spotted 3 more bikes approaching from the south. They're using our patches again. A plan formed in Sarah's mind. Big Mike, how good are your people at creating a distraction? Minutes later, the roar of motorcycles filled the air as Big Mike's crew approached the factory openly, revving their engines. The legitimate road warriors pulled up to the main gate, making a show of checking out the building. The distraction worked. Several of Snake's team moved to the windows, their attention drawn to the potential threat outside. Sarah and the tactical team used this opportunity to slip in through a side entrance. Inside, the factory was a maze of old machinery and shipping containers. Sarah's eyes widened as she spotted crates of stolen electronics, weapons, and what appeared to be military-grade communication equipment. This isn't just a criminal operation, she whispered to James. They built a whole infrastructure. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from above. Snake's team had spotted them. The tactical team quickly took cover as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces. Chen, a familiar voice called out. It was Razor, who had escaped during transport. Should have known you'd find us. Snake said you were smart. Sarah used the factory's layout to her advantage, remembering the training patterns. While SWAT engaged the main force, she and James flanked through a maintenance corridor. They emerged behind 3 of Snake's men, who were focused on the frontal assault. Police, drop your weapons. The surprised criminals hesitated just long enough to be subdued. More shots rang out, but now Snake's team was caught between multiple forces. The SWAT team pushed in from the front while Sarah's group controlled the rear. It's over. Sarah called out, you're surrounded, outgunned, and we have Snake in custody. Don't make this worse. There was a tense moment of silence, then the sound of weapons clattering to the ground. One by one, Snake's former military teammates surrendered. As they secured the scene, Agent Torres arrived with additional FBI units. Outstanding work, Chen. This isn't just a local operation we've shut down, it's an entire criminal network. The evidence they found was staggering. Detailed plans for future heists, connections to other criminal organizations, and enough stolen goods to fill multiple warehouses. James picked up a laptop from what appeared to be their command center. This will keep our cyber unit busy for months. They got shipping schedules, security patterns, everything. As the suspects were let out, Razor passed by Sarah. Snake was right about you, he said quietly. We got sloppy, underestimated you at that gas station. That was our biggest mistake. Sarah watched as the FBI began cataloging the evidence. What had started as a simple gas station confrontation had led to the takedown of a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Agent Torres approached her with a satisfied smile. You know, Chen, we could use someone with your skills in the bureau. Ever consider making a change? Sarah looked at James, who nodded encouragingly. Perhaps this wasn't just the end of a case, it might be the beginning of a new chapter in her career. 3 months after the warehouse raid, Sarah Chen stood in front of the police academy's graduating class, now wearing an FBI badge alongside her police credentials. The auditorium was packed with new recruits, veteran officers, and families, all gathered for what had become known as the gas station lecture. The smallest moment can change everything, Sarah began, gesturing to the screen behind her showing security footage from that fateful night at Murphy's gas station. What started as a routine stop for coffee ended. In the front row, Jimmy from the gas station beamed proudly. He'd been invited as a special guest, having played a crucial role in preserving the evidence that started it all. Next to him sat Big Mike Thompson, whose road warriors had since become valuable community partners in local law enforcement initiatives. The case led to 47 arrests across 6 states, Sarah continued. We recovered stolen goods worth over $12 million, and more importantly, we shut down a network that was threatening our community's safety. James, now her liaison between the FBI and local police, stood at the back of the room. They still partnered on major cases, with Sarah's new FBI role creating a stronger bridge between federal and local law enforcement. Snake and his crew made a critical mistake that night, Sarah explained. They saw what they wanted to see, an easy target. They didn't look deeper, didn't consider that appearances can be deceiving. In law enforcement, we can't afford to make those same mistakes. The screen changed to show evidence photos from the warehouse raid. Their military training made them formidable, but it also made them predictable. They stuck to what they knew, while we adapted and innovated. Remember, sometimes the best tactical response isn't the most obvious one. In the prison visitors' room 2 days earlier, Snake had finally revealed the full scope of their operation. "You know what really caught us off guard?" he told her. "Not your fighting skills or the FBI backup. It was how you turned our own methods against us. That's what a real warrior does." Back in the auditorium, Sarah moved to the practical portion of her lecture. "Today, we're going to analyze how this case evolved from a simple confrontation to a major federal investigation. Pay attention to the details. They matter more than you might think." She clicked to the next slide, showing Jimmy's gas station. It started here, at pump number 4. A place any of us might visit 100 times without incident. But that's the job, being ready for that one time when everything changes. After the lecture, during the reception, Agent Torres approached Sarah with news. "The task force is expanding. We're tracking similar operations in other regions. Your experience with this case makes you the perfect person to lead the training division." Sarah looked around the room at the faces of new recruits, veteran officers, and her fellow FBI agents. The gas station incident had changed more than just her career. It had created new partnerships, strengthened community ties, and demonstrated the importance of cooperation between different law enforcement agencies. Jimmy came up to her, still excited about his role in the case. "You know, Officer Chen, Agent Chen, we put up your photo behind the counter. Haven't had a single robbery attempt since then." Big Mike added with a laugh, "And every biker in 3 states knows not to cause trouble at that gas station. Your reputation precedes you." As the reception wound down, Sarah found herself back in the Academy's training room where she taught countless officers before joining the FBI. The familiar space brought back memories of drilling basic defensive tactics, the same moves that had proved so crucial that night at the gas station. James joined her there. "Missing the old days?" Sarah smiled, touching her new FBI badge. "Not missing, building on them. Everything I learned here, everyone I worked with, it all led to this moment." "Well?" James grinned. "You might want to build on them quickly. We just got word of some suspicious activity at a truck stop off the highway. Might be nothing, but you never know," Sarah finished, already reaching for her coat. "That's what we learned from all this. Every call could be routine, or it could be the one that changes everything." As they walked out together, Sarah glanced at the Academy's motto on the wall. "Prepare, protect, persevere." The gas station incident had taught her that these weren't just words. They were a promise to the community they served, a reminder that even the most ordinary moment could demand extraordinary courage. The case that began at pump number 4 was closed, but its lessons would continue to shape the next generation of law enforcement officers. And somewhere out there, another routine call was waiting to become something much more.